What's going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for joining us on this segment of Mi Casa Su Casa. I am here with Craig, or Pasta, as you all know, from the Convo Couch. And we want to talk about some VP picks. How you doing, Pasta?
I'm doing good, but I don't know if you should still call me Pasta. The other day, Jimmy Dore called me Skippy Pasta, and people been hitting me up as Skippy. So if you want to call me Skippy, I guess, because Jimmy Dore doesn't give me the name.
What did he call you, Skippy Pasta?
Well, he said, he asked Ron, he goes, oh, it's Pasta. He goes, is that Joe Pasta again or Johnny Pasta? He goes, no, it's actually Craig Pasta. He goes, I ain't going to call him Craig Pasta. I might as well call him Skippy Pasta. So people been calling me, hey, what's up, Skip? I'm like, damn.
Bro, what?
There it goes. Now I'm Skippy, Niko.
If Jimmy says it, that's it. That's law.
It's law. It's rule.
That's messed up, man. So today, everybody, we're going to talk. So the big conversation everybody has been discussing is, if Bernie Sanders becomes president, who would be best suited to be his vice president? And so you have the choice. We're going to talk about the three main candidates that everybody's been discussing: Nina Turner, Tulsi Gabbard, Elizabeth Warren. Potentially all of them have. I'm going to try to focus on some good things, because we're going to have to talk about the deficiencies of each of them, obviously. But we're also going to talk about the good things, yes, even about Elizabeth Warren. And so that way we can try to figure out who would probably be best served, because it's being a VP, although some people kind of think about being a VP as just the person who sits next to the president in case he or she dies. Like, it's a little bit more serious than that. And if you take your job seriously, you can actually do some good with it. And so with that being said, Craig.
Yes.
Why would Tulsi be a good VP in your mind? Why wouldn't she be a good VP?
Well, Tulsi, ultimately is my number one pick. Is the person I would love to be the vice president. Let's not forget that when all these people who are running right now had a chance to support Mr. Sanders in 2016, none of them, and very surprisingly so when you mentioned Elizabeth Warren, none of them stepped forward and did so as Tulsi Gabbard did. Her stance on foreign policy. We've been discussing this, Niko. And I've been watching a lot of the videos you made. And a lot of people were Bernie, he made the tweet yesterday, coming out with your head down, shaking your head, like, why, Bernie? Why, Bernie? Why?
Oh, man.
I think ultimately the reason why Tulsi would be the best is because she would drag him further to the left when it comes to foreign affairs. And that's really, really important.
So the rebuttal would be, she would be more proficient and better able to do that job if she was Secretary of State. What would you say to that?
Well, I think ultimately, if she ends up in either position,
No. No. You got to pick one. See, that's a downside to her being vice president.
It is.
Doesn't have as much power as Secretary of State, and some people, I think, forget that. Like, that's a deal.
Secretary of State has more power than the vice president, right?
Bro, the Secretary of
State, let's be honest here.
Is the president, but for world politics.
Yes.
That's why Hillary Clinton was able to sign off on so much going on in South America when it came to Venezuela, Honduras. I think she did. Well, she also was in somewhere else that I didn't even realize until later
Libya,
on.
Syria, South
America specifically. Ecuador, maybe? They did like a regime change.
Nicaragua, there was shit going on too as well. Nicaragua, there was money going to the opposition of Daniel Ortega while Madam Secretary was in office. So, pick a country, any country in South Central America. She was up in it.
Exactly.
And I think you raised a great point, Niko, because, ultimately I'd love to see Nina Turner be the vice president and Tulsi be the Secretary of State. But, obviously, if Tulsi is the vice president, I'd still be happy because I do think it's going to be Kamala Harris.
So I think the positives about Tulsi being vice president is that, the truth of the matter is Bernie ain't no spring chicken, right?
Well, yeah.
And it's not like a knock against him, but God forbid anything happened to him, or maybe he just gets tired, I don't think that he's the type of person who will get tired of working. I think that it's just kind of what he does. He came out the womb with gray hair, glasses, and a temper tantrum.
He did.
I literally look at pictures and videos of him from before I was born. I'm 30 years old. And I'm like, bro, how do you still have gray hair? You can't be gray your entire life. There's like 2 pictures of him with brown hair when he was a kid, and then he was instantly gray. I don't know how that happened, but he ain't no spring chicken. So Gabbard, there is a chance. There wasn't as much of a chance when like a Trump, right, or maybe even a Pence in office, like where they had to have somebody who was pretty young and experienced that could step up and take Trump's spot. I think with Tulsi, she brings about a certain amount of experience that makes Bernie a little bit more comfortable with the idea of stepping down if something were to happen with him. I think that she is much more likely to push back against the military-industrial complex, which she could do, obviously, in the VP position or the Secretary of State position. But I think that she's closer to his ear potentially as vice president. She does have a little bit more say as far as the staff is concerned as vice president. So as a Secretary of State, she will be part of the staff. As VP, she will be part of choosing that staff. So I think that would be very valuable because she has shown the discernment to be able to basically, pick and choose who's best to be on her team and who isn't. As an example of this is in right before her rally in Hawaii, when she had to fire that campaign manager from the firm. I can't remember what firm it is, but it's a quote unquote progressive firm, but I had called out a while ago. It's the same firm that they were consulting with Beto O'Rourke, with Andrew Gillum. They used Bernie's name to propel themselves, but Bernie actually warned us about them at the People's Summit, where he personally said, when your consultants tell you to do something, don't listen to them. Tulsi, they told her, and this is confirmed by the campaign, not to go on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that. Yeah, that's a terrible move, by the way, to not go on Joe Rogan.
They said, don't go on Jimmy Dore's show.
Yeah.
Terrible
move.
And I would argue that both of those shows are probably why she's in the position she's in the independent community as far as their preference to her being president over Bernie Sanders. So those were great moves on her behalf. And when they told her it was too early to announce, she just said, you know what? I know what you all are doing. You're fired. Boom. No love lost. She moved on. Wasn't a big deal. They tried to make it a big deal. But that type of judgment, I think Bernie needs when it comes to the hiring process, because I don't think Bernie personally has that judgment yet. I think he's a little bit too forgiving. Now, the downsides of Tulsi being VP is that, unfortunately, it leaves no room for Nina at the top levels outside of the, like, maybe advisor or chief of staff. I don't think it leaves room for her in that, in the administration, right? At least not close to Bernie in that regard. I think she would be better suited for that position than Tulsi, because Tulsi would be so much better suited for Secretary of State. That's also the other downside. She's actually, in my opinion, the only Secretary of State that I would trust right now. Like, I don't care who gets elected. If she's not the president, I would actually feel more personally comfortable with her being Secretary of State, because I'm so worried that basically anyone with the quote unquote experience, it's not the right type of experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So can I piggyback on some of this stuff, because I wrote some stuff down. You really going off, and I just love this conversation right now. But first of all, let me point out that Bernie's hair isn't gray; it's silver. That's what us people in New York call it. It ain't gray. Bernie's hair is silver, right? You can call him the silver fox.
Point of information.
The silver bullet, whatever you want to, but it ain't gray. It's silver. So let me just point that out too as well. Now, I think when we talk about this situation going on, is that ultimately, I would love the fact that Tulsi would be the Secretary of State, because it is one of the more powerful positions, and I think she's the best qualified for that particular situation. And then Nina Turner possibly be the vice president. Now, once again, this is in our minds, in our mystical world that we want to happen. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but if that was the case, carrying on the mantle for me would be where the discord comes into place. Because if it's between Nina and Tulsi to be the next president, I still think that Tulsi would be better prepared for that, a little bit more experience when it comes to foreign affairs. Not to take anything away from Nina. She's an ex-Congresswoman.
It's true. She
hasn't been in Congress for a while.
When it comes to domestic policies and talking about the needs of the working people, that's where she specializes in. So,
yeah, I mean, so that's, it depends on what you're looking at. Tulsi's going to be great in foreign affairs. Nina's going to be great in domestic policies. She's got a real pulse on the working people and mainstream people of color. She understands, Nina Turner. And I would just, in any situation, carrying the mantle forward would be the question. Who would you want in there? Who can be electable? Who could win? I think both women can win. Both of these women are my favorite women out there right now. But some areas Tina will lack, and some areas Tulsi will lack. So I think when you make this decision, I think ultimately the best decision right now is get Nina as the vice president. And because it's so important right now, Niko, we talk about this all the time, shit done gone crazy everywhere, especially when it comes to intervention and regime change. We really need somebody with Tulsi's insight and her rhetoric, hands off, to pull the cord. So henceforth, I'm hoping for Tulsi for Secretary of State and Nina for VP.
So the positives that I can see about Nina, and there are plenty of them, she's also a battle test in the same way that Tulsi is, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that so the same way that Tulsi potentially would have sacrificed her elected office because they ran everybody and their mom, against her in the primary, and they took her funding away. That happened to Nina too, but Nina lost her office, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't bitter about, amongst other things, right? She was disallowed from speaking at the national convention because they wanted her to give a full-throated endorsement of Hillary Clinton, and she absolutely refused to. So they stopped her from speaking because they didn't want the idea of a black woman. They had told the world, right? Black people and black women specifically don't like Bernie Sanders. So if the entire world was watching, especially as black as they tried to make the Democratic National Convention to the point where it was uncomfortable, it would have been.
They tried to do that to the Super Bowl too, right?
Yeah, it was so uncomfortable to look at. Good God. Because it was disingenuous, right? We're just like, bro, we're not trying to take over. We just want to be included equally. That's all we're asking. We're not asking to have the whole show. Hot damn Bojangles. But
I love Bojangles. I gotta get back to Florida. Get me some Bojangles. That dirty rice, that chicken, so much better than Popeyes. People don't know that shit, but when you Florida, go ahead.
They don't know about that yet. But
spicy chicken.
I think that
you talking about? Popeyes is a whack.
Nina would be a great vice president. So when we talk about vice president, you also got to go campaign around the country, right? I think that although clearly Nina and Bernie are fantastic together, I think that Nina has the gravitas, has the speaking ability, and has the galvanization skills to go to places like California, like Michigan, and other places that may be where Bernie, we know for a fact, has the outside that is going to, the outskirts, the rural areas that are absolutely going to come and support him. But Nina can walk into the Detroits and make sure that the black community will come out and absolutely support them. She can walk in to Florida and Jacksonville and make sure that the black community comes out in large numbers to support him and ensure that Bernie Sanders, like Barack Obama, gets 90 to 93% of the black vote. Because if he does that, all of a sudden, those states that swung towards Trump because black people sat out, Nina helps make sure it swings towards Bernie going forward. Now, the beautiful part about that is that once they get in office, like we know, Tulsi would likely be Secretary of State, which would be if you get Bernie, Nina, and Tulsi in those three positions, the world looks dramatically different than what it does right now.
The world.
The entire world does. Now, here's the beautiful part about that. God forbid, once again, but this is a real life possibility that I think we have to acknowledge. If something happens to Bernie or if he chooses to step down, guess what happens? Nina Turner gets to be VP or gets to be president. She selects her vice president from there, if I'm not mistaken. She can choose Tulsi.
Yeah.
And Tulsi and Nina can hash out who they believe should be the successor as Secretary of State. And at that point, Tulsi would have a strong list of candidates that she can trust to go on it and carry on that mantle. So then, mind you, I don't mind having a Nina Turner as president for the next 7 years or 6 years or however long it would be, and then transitioning right into a Tulsi Gabbard right after that. You're potentially seeing a situation, because I don't know if it works in reverse, right? Unfortunately. And it's not anything against Nina. It's just that electoral politics is weird like that because the truth of the matter is, and me and her have even talked about this, all three of them, Bernie, Nina, and Tulsi, have their pass. Nina's is the only one that hasn't been brought up yet because she's not running for an elected office at that high of a level. That's why it hasn't come out. They're going to find out about Nina's PAC money. They're going to find out that she has a little bit of skeletons in her closet, that she's reconciled, but the truth of the matter is she's not reconciled them with the people, and that going forward could prevent her from being from having such a good opportunity to basically take the presidency without anybody even contending against her. So on top of that, I do believe that Nina would have the Congressional Black Caucus behind her 100% of the time while she's VP. Now, you know that she will provide.
You think so?
Of course. You want to be the Black Caucus, if they nationally compete with Nina when it comes to passing legislation and figuring out who they're going to endorse and shit like that, they would get blasted because Nina doesn't care. Nina will call you out by name. She doesn't care. Like,
That's what we love about Nina Turner, is that she doesn't do that. But on that national ticket, what you're talking about, who gives Bernie the best chance to win as the vice president? Is it Nina or Tulsi? Because I think we have to also remember, even though Tulsi is a woman of color and she really comes off, a lot of people think she's white. I'm like, oh no, she's a Samoan woman. I have to explain that. She does get a lot of those independent and veteran votes, those people who support the military. And the fact that she is an anti-war veteran, she really brings to the table this unique group of voters who might have sat out last time will now vote this time.
If she goes out and campaigns with him anyway, which I've gotten confirmation that is probably what will absolutely happen, if she doesn't win, because that's still a real possibility that I think people aren't acknowledging because of these polls. But I'm telling y'all, one stay at a time. Y'all, Bernie is obviously the king right now. He's doing stuff, but that's because of his name recognition. Name recognition only carries you so far for so many states, and then that debate stage will really separate people. And I think Tulsi will have that advantage because she's taken some steps. She's agreed with everything that Bernie's talking about and has even taken steps further, like introducing election justice legislation, like introducing the Stop Arming Terrorism Act, things like that, that what I believe will put her in a position to legitimately compete with Bernie Sanders. And then when they get to the convention, they can decide from there what they want to do. But
something, Niko, really quick to piggyback on this. And I said this last time, when a lot of people didn't understand when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were debating, and I was explaining to people, like, guys, this is going to be very awkward for a debate because it's the first time you're going to see a Republican attack a Democrat from the left. Tulsi Gabbard's the only person on that stage when the Democratic debates come, hopefully she's up there, that can attack Bernie Sanders or debate him from his left.
The only one. That's a big statement.
That's huge.
Right? And once again, that journey of her personal evolution, and basically, it's crazy. It's like when the disciple has to take on their master in their own dojo. Basically, what we're going to see, because her evolution came through Bernie Sanders, and now she's like, basically, I'm not going to say she says this, but basically, it's the equivalent of her saying, without saying, you are not necessarily righteous as you should be, in some of your convictions. And I believe that I am. And it's funny enough, because I learned these values from you, and I know why I left the Democratic Party or left the Democratic National Committee is because of those values that you espouse. But now you don't exhibit them as much as you used to. So I feel like I'm the person to do the job, which is like a big, people think that that's like maybe too far-fetched, but if you look at the comment sections, if you look at the people that support Tulsi, I even said the other day, it pissed me off when Tulsi said what she said about Assad. I felt like it wasn't smart.
You're talking about one on The View when she said, there's no doubt that Assad is that was the part that she manufactured some consent.
Yeah, and I think she was exhausted from being bullied for the last 2-3 weeks straight. Yeah. I really think that was what it was. She just got tired of it. And on the national television stage like that, when you have a bunch of daytime, single moms chilling at the house, not worried about anything, they're all watching, listening to what they're going to say. And she knows that they expect, but she didn't even have to answer like that. But that's a different discussion. But my point is, because she's been so consistent in her convictions, it took that much for her to finally say, okay, Assad's a dictator. What do you want from me? With Bernie, he was jumping at the opportunity to say it.
He's been saying it for a while. He's been talking bad about Assad a while. So
exactly. So what people kind of got frustrated, because bro, it's one thing if you get absolutely trapped and cornered, like Tulsi did. That's what basically happened. And she had other opportunities where she could have caved and did not. But for her to be trapped, and it took that much for her to say it, I can see why people are like, I get it. Because I got it. I was like, I know she didn't want to say that. I know she did it. But she felt like she had to. Whether, once again, like I felt about Bernie conceding to Hillary, whether or not I agree with it is inconsequential, because if she felt she had to do it, then she's going to do what she has to do. And she's done a good job keeping herself in office thus far. So I'm just going to have to, concede to whatever authority she feels like she has in that. But because of her convictions and her track record for the last 2 years, people forgave her almost instantly.
Yeah.
Which is different than Bernie, who conceded to Hillary and then kind of capitulated to the establishment rhetorically a lot. over the last 2 years. So I think that he's going to I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be eye-telling. And listen, this is something within the progressive community that we deal with every day, that we're trying to find a way to talk about it. You know, I had a progressive burner who said she blocked somebody because somebody said he wasn't going to donate to Bernie's campaign because of this statement about Venezuela. And I'm so sorry, but you know, even people back in the days, there were somebody who had a video that said, "Shut the fuck up, Bernie Sanders," and that person was right. When Bernie steps out of line or steps out of the progressive bubble or gets into that kind of like that pro intervention, even though he says he's against regime change, he's got to be called out. And when you manufacture consent, there's no reason to sit there and say, "Oh, Maduro's this, he's terrible, he's criminal." But I don't believe in regime change, because you're leaving the door open for when the neocons can use it and go right in. Not just
leaving the door open, you're setting down the red carpet.
Yeah.
Like, it's more than leaving the door open. And when I tell you, you have to call him out on these things, because I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm telling you what I know. He doesn't know better.
Yeah.
This is not his area of expertise.
He's got bad foreign advice too. He's got a bad foreign advisor. Somebody mentioned his name. This guy.
He does not know better. And listen, I talked to somebody on Bernie's campaign the other day. I'm not going to say who it was, because I got like 3 or 4 people's numbers, and I've been keeping in contact so I can figure out where his head is when it comes to this type of stuff. And I was telling him, I said, yo, whoever this Matt Dust guy is, first of all, the fact that he worked for Center for American Progress was an immediate red flag for me. Because even if you're not nefarious in your intent, you are basing everything you know about this particular situation off of potentially false and really opportunistic information and data being given by Center for American Progress. This is the same Center for American Progress that was trying to pretend as if people were not being censored on Facebook and YouTube, even though we knew, and Facebook came out and said directly, if we don't think your content is real, or if it's fake news, then we're going to censor you. They said
that's not what what's the name? Neera Tanden said, buddy. That's not what.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's not what when Stacey Abrams got caught up in that shit
all the time. This guy left Center for American Progress, went straight on Bernie Sanders' campaign, and that's the feeling you get that Bernie's quote unquote talking on both sides of his neck. Go look at Matt Dust's Twitter. It's the same exact rhetoric. I'm like, oh, this is who's misinforming him. This is who's telling him to talk like this. And you can tell, because when Bernie talks about Russia, when he talks about Venezuela, even Syria, when he says the things like Assad's a dictator, Bernie is the type of person that if he says something, he backs it up with the facts almost immediately after that. So like when he was denouncing the idea of a regime change in Venezuela, he talked about Nicaragua, he talked about Brazil, he talked about Honduras. He talked about all the facts surrounding regime change in the past. But when he says Maduro is a dictator, there's no facts backing it up. And he sounds uncomfortable when he says it, because he just has to quickly move on to his no proxy war spiel, because he doesn't actually know the facts, because his foreign policy advisor has no facts to give him.
Yeah. And it's kind of a shame, because Bernie Sanders, more than anybody, he's called out the revolution, in Iran, and also appointing the Shah years ago without consent of Congress, going through the deep state, going through the CIA. I mean, he's whistled that rhetoric more than anybody, you know, and to see this kind of, this attitude and this talk about Maduro's a dictator, Assad is it's scary.
He's from the old guard, because even when he opposed Iraq, he said the same thing about Saddam. Now, I'm not saying it's Saddam. Saddam was probably the most dictatorial out of all the people in the past. Like, Saddam was worse than Gaddafi. Gaddafi was the elected chairman of the African Union. So it makes you really question it. People like Gaddafi, people like Assad, people like Maduro, although there are slight differences in their structures of government, same thing with Fidel Castro. Do you know why they're able to maintain power for so long? They're able to maintain power because they have been through leader after leader after leader after leader, and only these people would stand up to the imperialism of the West. That is how they're able to maintain their office for so long, and why their predecessors most often are able to be overthrown by the people without help from any government besides themselves. That's the difference.
Can I say something too? We talked about this. Saddam, was probably the worst dictator of all these dictators that we toppled or moved out of the way or put in power.
He was on our side first.
What's that?
He was on our side first, and then
of course during the Iran
attacking Kuwait.
Yeah, we funded him with weapons of mass destruction to fight Iran when we were mad about when the Ayatollah taken over after Carter and all that, and started with Reagan. But we talk about Iraq. Iraq was one of the most diversity country. We had the most diversity than a lot of countries in the region. There used to be so many Christians living in Iraq that no longer live there now that Saddam Hussein is gone. So even the worst.
And we used to say that we were going to save them from persecution, but I had never even heard of Christians being persecuted in Iraq. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I also heard that Iraq was actually becoming secularized.
Yeah.
Same way that Syria is. And so what that happens is when you become secular, you become more free, you have more freedom of thought, more freedom of ideas, and you're less likely to give in and bow down to a theocratic dictator.
Yeah. He was a minority leader. Remember, they literally called him the mayor of Baghdad because he didn't have as much control as people thought, that he was kept in check by the majority in that country. He was actually the minority. We had no reason to go in there. I mean, I don't want to start with that again. Don't get me.
Yeah.
I done talked so much about Iraq. I don't want to.
But the point
about
is,
Niko.
Bernie Sanders knows the history. And maybe but here's the thing. He may know some of the history, but he doesn't know all of the history or the patterns because, once again, he's under the impression, and anybody can tell, that our intelligence agencies are accruing information and giving it to Congress people, and they're giving accurate information with good intentions, right? Like, oh, our government wouldn't do anything to intentionally harm people, or our government wouldn't do anything that wasn't good for the American. That is a thought process I had to break myself out of right after the Democratic National Convention. I knew our government was like corrupt. I knew that there were corrupt people. I never knew the way that Tulsi has even come to realize, oh no, our intelligence agencies are not good at all. There are some good people at the lower levels just doing their job and collecting a paycheck, but the people making the final decision, not good. And that they don't have any good intentions. When you bring Elliott Abrams on, that should have been, so if Bernie doesn't know better, that should have been Matt Duss's cue right then and there. No, Bernie, stop saying everything you're saying. I can pretty much guarantee based off of history, because if you're a foreign policy analyst first before you became an advisor. So you should know based off of our history. Once you brought Elliott Abrams in, that whole humanitarian aid bullshit was out the window.
Yeah, gone.
And Tulsi knows this, which is why she gets points. And that's, once again, when they say, well, why aren't you for humanitarian aid in Venezuela? She's like, I am. But they wouldn't need humanitarian aid if we didn't have sanctions on them. They wouldn't need humanitarian aid if we hadn't been working with Colombia to block off the aid that they had already received. Also, they're receiving humanitarian aid from other countries. They just don't want to accept ours. So maybe we should observe the history as to why they want to accept our humanitarian aid. And once again, so they're going to have to deal with that on the debate stage. She can actually do a pretty damn good job, even with that Assad statement. Yeah. Which I get it. It's like saying that Assad may not be the dictator that we're expecting him to be is, like, I guess, too controversial. And only in this country is it that controversial, to be totally honest with you. I remember talking to some Syrians, and I was like, yo, I heard Assad is this crazy person. And they were like, oh my God, for real? I was like, no, I'm just kidding. And they were like, oh, thank you, you're the only one.
No. You know what they should say is they say, no, your presidents, whoever they are, they're the crazy people.
Oh, they know.
They're the ones going invading countries and drone bombing a whole lot of places. They're the ones who got more blood on their hands than any of these dictators and stuff. And as we've shown before, Niko, we did the whole video when we showed Assad driving around in a regular car around his country, talking to people how they feel Assad. A lot of people might not like Assad, but they recognize him as the elected leader, and he should be ruling.
It's the same way, even though it's like the bad version of that, right? I don't like Trump as a person, as a president. He is trash. He is not good. He is a puppet and he is a bully.
He's full of shit.
He's exactly, and he's
so full of shit.
But here's the thing about that. Whenever the Democratic Party was using the intelligence community, and illegitimately using the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Intelligence Committee to try and oust him under a false pretense, I am concerned about the integrity of that office. And if people are working together to conspire against the President of the United States for their own personal political agenda, that is a problem, right? Even if it wasn't foreign, even if it was a legitimate problem. Actually, no, I don't have to say if it was, I would say something. We know that there's a foreign problem, and we address it all the time with calling out AIPAC and Saudi Arabia. So it isn't like we're exclusive, like, oh, we only care when the Democratic Party and the intelligence agency try to overthrow the political presidential office. But no, we talk about it all the time on this channel about AIPAC, about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and other countries, and other corporations even, for trying to basically put their will put us at the mercy of their will by choosing the president of that would benefit them. No.
Yeah, they've been doing this for a long time, and this particular president, I remember his famous "drain the swamp" speech when he was saying they're all lobbyists, and we're going to make a law to get rid of lobbyists, and the staff members, they become rich, they're lobbyists, and then a week later he goes to AIPAC and he just starts pandering to them, as he's been pandering the same way he pandered. He told the American public that we're getting out of Syria. Then he goes to AIPAC and he says, we're not getting out of Syria. We got to leave troops there to protect Iran from Israel. I mean, this is the same
bullshit
mentality we're trying to deal with when it comes to all these bullshit lobbies, the hypocritical double standards that you're talking about. Can I ask you a question, though, Niko?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Somebody's gotten to Bernie ever since the convention. I mean, you saw Tim Canova last week on Jimmy Dore, and a lot of people pointed out when we talked about that something happened at the convention, that somebody got to him, somebody maybe within the deep state, within intelligence, because the rhetoric of the Venezuela rhetoric of Maduro, the Russian collusion kind of rhetoric that he kind of asserts to, and the fact that he will never, ever, and this pisses me off more than anything, where Tulsi's been great and Bernie's been bad, is he will not call out the election integrity problems we have on the left. Maybe somebody's got to him.
I think that the DNC got to him. I'm not going to say that the deep state hasn't gotten. Well, no. So if we consider the deep state, all the powers that be trying to basically leverage the power in obscure and obscene ways, then I would say yeah, because I think that part of the whole investigation with Jane Sanders was they were like, Bernie needs to stand down. If he doesn't stand down, we're going to go
after her. Yeah, I remember that.
Go after her with
it was bullshit, by the way.
It was like total bullshit. And nobody really took, like, the Republicans tried to take it seriously, and it like fizzled out immediately. But it also fizzled out around the time that Bernie was echoing this Assad rhetoric and this Russiagate rhetoric. So there is a possibility. I mean, the FBI uses is hitmen all the time, right?
Yeah.
They did it to Trump. That's what it was. That's what they were doing, right? So they can get they opened and closed Jane Sanders' case in like a matter of 6 months. They're still talking about the Clinton Foundation. They're still deliberating it. They're still deliberating this Russiagate collusion nonsense, despite the fact that there's literally nothing there, which eventually, no, they just finished dealing with it. So like that took 2.5 years. The ratings dropped. That's really what happened. I just want everybody to know. They were able to close the case because nobody cared anymore. We're like, okay, shit, if Russia stole the election, it's already 2.5 years in. You're not going to impeach him. You don't have the numbers anymore, so it doesn't matter. Let's move on. But I do believe that he was propositioned in a way and told basically you need to play ball, or we're going to throw your name through the dirt, through the mud so much that you have absolutely no chance of running again. Yeah. And given what he knows about himself, given what he knows about his ability, the leverage that he had, the money that he had in his treasure chest, if you will, for campaigning, he looked at the revolution behind him, and I believe he fell on his sword. Well, not fell on his sword. I also won't say that. He retreated. He retreated so that he could live to fight another day. And I believe
I tweeted that. Yeah, I did spell "you're" wrong, but I tweeted that.
I said it the next day. I said it right after the day after he suspended the rules and endorsed Hillary Clinton. I said, look, I know everybody's pissed. I'm just as pissed, but I also understand how politics work, and I understand what momentum looks like. You're gonna see him appear on television a lot. When he gave us 2 big clues, when he got up and walked out, he was not back at that convention for the rest of the time. He was done. Then I don't know if you remember, the camera was on his back as he walked out as soon as he endorsed her. Then that interview right after, no, I'm independent. Well, what about the Democrat? No, I'm not. I'm independent.
Yeah.
Like, that was letting him know, like, I'm back. Don't worry about it. Here's what we're going to do. When he created our revolution, I knew what time it was. When he put Nina in charge of it, I knew what time it was. Went campaigning around the country with AOC, was trying to strategically pick who he was and was not going to endorse, made a couple of missteps in a couple of cases, but did overall pretty damn well. Those type of moves you're not making unless you have a plan. Now you have people all over the country who are in elected office, and if they don't have elected office, they have enough popularity that they could bring you a lot of attention and a lot of really fundraising because of our revolution. You have that ad that he put out was brilliant, and it really surmised everything that I was saying. It talked about every single thing that he had done since that election, and guess what everybody else could talk about outside of Tulsi Gabbard? Nothing.
Zero.
Platitudes.
Zero.
That was it. Bernie damn them platitudes. Here's the reality. This is what we're dealing with. I know if we, if I could do this as a senator, imagine what I'll be able to do with all you behind me. And that's why he's not going to call it election fraud. Because if he calls out election fraud against the Democrats, don't get me wrong. They want to. I'm telling you. They know it. I know for
it's the thing that listen, Niko,
somebody told me straight up, you know how much I want to retweet you, but I can't because of the position we're in right now and the strategy that we're trying to do.
But you better do something, because that's a serious issue when it comes to progressives and people on the left who are saying, yo, I'm going to go vote for Tulsi and stand by Tulsi because she wanted to get some form of election integrity by making sure that all these machines have a paper trail so we can see what the fuck is what. And Bernie has kind of only talked about the governor issue, which was the Republicans cheating, on people of color in Georgia and in your home state, Florida, which I will never return to because I hate it there. And I love Cali. Cali's the best. But it is something that really needs to be addressed because it's the biggest thorn in the side. Tim Canova talked about it. Like, what difference does it make? You're an election integrity specialist over here, my friend. What difference does it make?
So here's a caveat to all of that. Here's a caveat to all of that. They didn't call it out about last time. Things are different now. This is for all the marbles. He was filling things out. Like, if you couldn't tell, remember what he was doing for not underneath, behind the scenes, when we found out that he was sending out letters to various secretaries of state to challenge and audit the elections, because that was around the time they stopped doing exit polling because it turned out he was fucking winning. And they were like, so he was doing things behind the scenes, filling things out. I still remember what Jane said. Jane was like, if you see something, y'all have to call it out because we can't. If we do, they'll call us sore losers. Then Bernie goes on to say a little bit after that, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. And if I do, don't. So now they try to come out and say it's your fault that, some people are alleging that it's your fault that Trump got elected. So remember before he would just kind of move on from it. But now he challenges it and he says, oh, no. I did everything I could to get Hillary Clinton elected. The people didn't choose her. Now it's my turn. That's basically what he said. He's not putting up with it. And I think that was kind of like a little glimpse into, look, I mean, I know everything about his foreign policy, but I do know what I can do domestically. I do know we got the money, we got the popularity, we got the name recognition, and we got the volunteers. And so I know you're not going to convince me with all this crowd turnout, with all this fundraising and everything now. I don't have any question in my mind that y'all are cheating if this does not go my way. The only person that I make an exception for that is if Tulsi Gabbard beats me from the left. That's a whole different.
But can I ask you a question?
What's up?
But don't you think, everything you just said there makes a lot of sense. But why, if that would be the case, why does he still push the Russians are still meddling in other people's election bullshit? Because that, to me,
foreign policy advisor. Remember we talked about
incentive of the left, of the people who want election integrity for the Democratic Party. Remember, Niko, me and fam just covered these ADEMs over here, and I can tell you something. It was a fucking sham. We need some election integrity. They're controlling their power from the bottom, and they're cheating there.
We know for a fact that election integrity is something important to Bernie.
It hasn't changed on the left. It hasn't changed. If anything, it's gotten worse.
It hasn't changed, but infrastructurally, it has. Because there are some people who don't want Bernie Sanders to win. The problem, there's some. It isn't like last time where people were actually paid to make sure he didn't win. But the Democratic Party doesn't have any money anymore. And they don't have the Hillary victory fund to lean on. They need a Bernie Sanders presidency to have any hope of being the Democratic Party they once were. And
you think they believe that, though? Wait, you think they believe that? Because I still think that Kamala is going to be pushed down our throats. That's why I think that Kamala
they're already pivoting
will be the vice president.
But they're already pivoting from Kamala. They're already talking about Klobuchar. Like, they all of a sudden, she's the sweeper.
They're fishing. They're fishing. They're like the State of the Union speech with Kennedy and Abrams. They're just fishing.
I know Kennedy dropped out that conversation fast. He was being put in the polls, and they stopped showing him.
Yeah.
But I think that they're pivoting from Kamala because Kamala is just not good. I think they're realizing, like, oh my God, she was the right race. She was the right gender. You know, she has the quote unquote right background. She's from the most important state that we need. She all the blocks except for the block. Oh shit, we forgot to check if she was actually electable. Like, that's the one block they didn't check for. And
you gonna get a cop elected? You can't get a cop elected. And Kamala Harris is a cop.
Is the top cop.
Top cop.
Top shot up. So,
but she listened to Snoop and Tupac in college when Snoop and Tupac weren't even around. In fact, when she was listening to Tupac, his name was MC New York at the time for the Digital Underground, singing the same old song. That's how stupid that woman is. I'm sorry, man.
Nah, man, that was just,
you remember that song? Oh no, it's the same song,
bro. She was just, you know, she was smoking some really good shit. Like,
I bet we get a hold of Kamala Harris. Weed dealer and get her some of that shit, because that shit put her back about 4 years.
I told him, man, if y'all see Kamala Harris's dealer, don't tell him I'm looking for him, but I'm looking for him.
But you're looking for him.
Ask who looking, it ain't me, but if you find him, just tell him to call me. That's all I'm, you know. Look.
You don't think that the establishment is going to push for her to be the vice president? Because that's what I see. Because I think they're going to say, listen, we understand that Bernie Sanders is an avalanche this time. We can't cheat him out. We're going to have to join him. So why don't we get behind him early, get one of our centrist establishment candidates like Kamala Harris, because burners will vote for Bernie.
But they're not. But the establishment,
anybody's the vice president, and try to push that.
The establishment is backing Bernie. The establishment isn't necessarily backing Bernie. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are going to be some people, like the media, for example, who attack Bernie regularly because that's their job. They do still want the establishment candidate to win. They still want that. But the problem is there are politicians now with self-interest that they have to look out for. Why do you think that senator came out and endorsed Bernie?
Self-interest. Totally. I hear you. I agree. They understand now that, you know, I think Elizabeth Warren understands more than anybody how hurt she was for not supporting Bernie Sanders out the gate. Like, it's detrimental to your political career. And that's why guys like in Orange County, when we were moderating this debate, like Harley Rauda, were trying to get on that Bernie wagon. So, I mean.
There are people, it's kind of, so what we saw in the movement, which you could speak to being in California, because it's ripe with, you know, opportunists. We saw a bunch of people who try to pretend to be quote unquote burners, who are only in it for their own self-interest, right? The Rock being one of them, right? And that was just, I'm talking about at the grassroots level.
No, there's a lot. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Now we're just seeing the politicians do the same. Now, that could work out in our favor. That is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm pragmatic when it comes to politics. I don't do purity tests as far as my purity test is where do you vote? That's my purity test. I don't care if you're the least likable person in the goddamn world. If you're voting for Medicare,
it's all about policy. It's all about voting on policy. I agree.
If you're, you know what I'm saying? When people are like, well, Tulsi's personal views about the LGBTQ community and abortion haven't changed. What does her record say? 100% on women's rights? 100% on LGBTQ community? I don't care if you like my sexual orientation or not. I don't care. Like, I don't care if you don't like whether I get an abortion. What does your vote say? Because if you're voting against what you personally believe because it's the right thing for your constituency, that speaks volumes to your integrity as a representative of or a senator or a president, right? Yeah. That's the important thing to me. So,
you know, Niko, you talk about that too. The whole thing with the Brady bill and all that stuff is like, okay, wait a second. We're talking about this one little vote here. What is his rating from the NRA? D-? Okay.
D-.
D- is okay. I think Bernie Sanders is okay. His voting record on guns is a D-.
Man, look, that Bernie bill BS was so funny because you could tell they just gave Hillary that. He voted against this. Just go ahead and use it. She had no idea why. She didn't even try to research. These people aren't as wise as people. They're not as savvy as people will think. These consultants don't know much. They're glorified fundraisers. So with that being said, because I don't want to go too long, you have any last words about Elizabeth Warren before we close out? Because she's the last one that we didn't cover. I think that obviously it's mostly bad, but there are a couple of aspects about her that intrigue me, I guess. What do you think? Would you think that Elizabeth Warren's a good choice? Because if there was a choice between Kamala, because they're going to put an establishment person there, right? If the choice between Kamala and Warren, I would want Warren.
Of course. We listen. I mean, I have come to grips with this, and I've been thinking about this. And I was kind of happy when Bernie Sanders was asked, and he was talking about diversity within his campaign and who he might pick as a VP. He said possibly a person who's a different gender than mine, possibly somebody who's a woman of color. I liked it right away because I thought it was kind of eliminating certain people, the Klobuchars, eliminating the Elizabeth Warrens, but it kept Kamala on the hook. But realistically, I mean, I think we agree, Nina and Tulsi are our choices. But when we say
Kamala, and you're right though, because Kamala will not attack Bernie at all. She has not attacked him. She refuses. And that's because she doesn't want to ruin her opportunity.
Well, I mean, she's also piggybacked on him all the time too, as well. Going for Medicare for all, knowing that it's a full, Republican Congress here, that it's not going to have any effect. Where were you not saying this years ago? Yeah. But
we definitely have to make sure that that we're diligent as we're going to be during this election. That Democratic National Convention, listen when I tell y'all, they're going to use the superdelegates to try and elect and nominate Kamala as VP. Because the superdelegates, even though they don't get the vote in the presidential unless it's not a decided victory, unless they get a certain amount of percentage. But in the vice president shit, they can select whoever they want to. Yeah. Now the delegates still have a choice. Don't get it wrong. But and it's funny because we didn't see them invoke that privilege last year.
Yeah.
Funny enough, right? But this time, best believe they're not going to let Tulsi or Nina get that presidential nomination or that VP nomination without a fight.
Yeah. I really think that you're hitting on to something here. I've been talking about this. I've been talking about the VP slot for a long time because it is the one area where I think the establishment knows that they can still get a big say and possibly get their VP candidate of choice in there. And I think they are going to use the convention. I think they're going to go to Bernie early and try to make a deal saying, hey, listen, we'll get behind you. Let's just get our VP choice. But when you when you talk about Elizabeth Warren,
I don't think he's going to do that. I think that he's not, they don't have any bargaining. They don't have any room to bargain with. You get what I'm saying?
They got the mainstream media.
But by the time we get to the national convention, if Bernie is there,
I'm talking, this could be, listen, Niko, that deal,
Tulsi doesn't get made out, then there is no one else to stay. The closest person in a skewed New Hampshire poll to him right now that is actually in the race is Kamala, and she's losing by 12 points. And it's worse than that. That's optimistically. So there may not even get to a point where they get to the convention and they will not have a say. When I get to this convention and if I won the percentage that I need, y'all can kiss my ass. If you don't, give me the VP I want. I'll flip this fucking bitch upside down.
Listen. I really wish that would. Listen. I don't feel that same way. I feel that there's some backroom deal being made. We talked about those three areas when it comes to Venezuela, Russian collusion, and election integrity, where I think that kind of, like you said, that Bernie's kind of played ball with the DNC. I think this deal was good. And regardless, to me, and to digress back to what we were talking about, because it's important, Elizabeth Warren is the one that I'm not going to like the most, but it's the one I can settle with the most, because the one area where she has been good is attacking the inequality issue.
And she's experienced in the Senate. And if it comes to a tie-breaking vote in the Senate, which the VP would be able to do, I trust Kamala. I trust Elizabeth Warren to vote with Bernie. I don't necessarily trust Kamala. Believe it. I don't trust her. Now, granted, maybe the fear of constantly being watched may make her more likely to. But I think that Kamala isn't going to want to be vice president. I know it sounds.
I think she's going to take that deal in her hands down and
bro,
have years to run.
You have to watch these. She is not looking good on the campaign trail. She's tired of being heckled. She's tired of being bothered, and eventually, it wears people down.
It does.
She's been when you're the front runner, like you're in a different position than everybody except for Bernie and Tulsi, because Tulsi's getting a weird amount of attention for somebody who isn't polling. But she's getting a disproportionate amount of attention. And she's, once again, now instead of her being the prosecutor and constantly being able to ask questions and demanding answers to those questions, she's on the other side of that. And I don't think she likes it.
It wore it down. I think the Willie Brown, the San Francisco governor thing, I think that really played out. And that was really a monkey wrench thrown in with the progressive groups here, with the social justice warriors and all these other people on how to address and attack those things. And I say social justice warriors in a positive light because they are activists out there campaigning, and they want to make sure, that things are virtuously done. And I accept them. I don't agree with their tactics. But that thing threw a monkey wrench into everything. And I really think it hit at Kamala's core when that stuff came out, on top of all the Kamala is a cop, Kamala's taking money from here. So I have to agree with you. I don't think she expected 100%.
I don't think she expected Willie to come out. Not and straight up say, like, I still never covered it to an extent because I was like, yo, this is wild. He came out and said, yeah, we were together. That's why I gave her the job. Like,
there was a point, yeah. I mean, and whether we like it or not, Niko, and I'm not going to attack her on that. I know when people say, oh, you can't attack her on that, you're kind of implying that every woman gets a head for sleeping with their bosses. That's not a good way to attack it and stuff. Whether we like it or not, it will be looked at as another pay-for-play scandal within the Democrats. You do this for me, and I do that for you. So
the worst possible thing, Elizabeth Warren can't beat Trump. She already lost that war about 3 years ago, right? She can't beat Trump.
She keeps losing it. She keeps going. What was that stupid shit with the test, Niko? I mean, come on. Just play right into the man. It's like playing poker with your cards thrown over so your opponent can see it. Stop it.
Then Kamala Harris, bruh. Listen, we are gentlemen, right? We have some integrity, and we're sympathetic to the cause of progressivism and the feminist cause, and we understand what the implications could be if we harp on that issue too much.
Absolutely.
Donald Trump ain't Niko Imposter. Donald Trump will take it to that debate. This is the same man who brought the rape victims of Bill Clinton to a debate.
Yeah.
He don't care.
He don't give a damn.
If Kamala decides to grace us with her presence, if the Democratic Party decides to elevate her to that level, best believe she will get torn up.
So will Elizabeth Warren. So will I mean, the Pocahontas stuff. Don't be hitting that Pocahontas stuff like a drum.
It's to a different level. When you talk about a black woman, at least what she's claiming to be, a black woman breaking up a black home in order to get a position after all these black women out here work so hard to earn their positions, and they believe in the sanctity of marriage and things like that. They love the Obamas because in their minds the Obamas were the perfect couple. There was no scandals in that regard, and that was as for all the things that go on in the black community, seeing a nuclear family stay intact like that through such a tumultuous period is a big deal. But when you come out the gate and Willie Brown comes out and says, I gave her this job, I was sleeping with her, and we were having intermarital relations, et cetera, like the black community is going to give her the side eye.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the truth. And we could talk about why all day, but you can't galvanize like Obama did once that stuff starts coming out. And now that's all Trump will talk about. And because that's all Trump will talk about, the news goes the way Trump goes. Whether it's defending him or attacking him, that's all that they will hear is Willie Brown.
Yeah. They'll beat that like a drum. I mean, a lot of people in those inner, and when I talk to a lot of Republicans, a lot of conservatives, and I talk to them on a regular basis at my restaurant, I work in a semi-fancy area where there's 75% of the people I wait on are Trump supporters. They talk about the pay-for-play scandals that Clinton did of just appointing people all the time for favors. And I know they look at this the same way. One of my customers said to me the other day, they said, could you imagine if Donald Trump appointed Stormy Daniels to a position because he was sleeping with her? But it's okay for Kamala Harris to get her jobs. Now, I know it's not the same thing, Niko, but in their mind, it's another pay-for-play scandal.
See, the thing about Republicans is that they're very, at least electorally, they're hyper-competitive. And they believe like, okay, when you win, whatever, you earn the ability to do what the hell you want to, no matter how corrupt or non-corrupt it is.
Yeah.
But when you're going for that position,
get my way.
But once when you're competing for that position, no, they want you to. There is an election right now in North Carolina that is about to be completely done over because Republicans challenge their own primary.
Why can't we get that on the Democratic side? Why can't we get that on the Democratic side? Why can't we
have to read the primaries because of it's called the NC9. It's something I'm going to cover, but they're about to have to read because it was a general election that brought the attention to it. But then the Republicans were like, because the discovery phase, which is the best part about any case like this, the Republicans found out that he did it not only during the general but during the primary election, and so they're like, excuse me? So they're about to decertify their election, something that the Democrats would never do, despite the fact that Jill Stein won her case, right? And Pennsylvania is about to have paper ballots and all that because of how rigged the system was. Democrats would never do that. Republicans are hyper-competitive. So things like quid pro quo before you've earned your spot doesn't sit well with them. I don't know why. It's an alpha male thing, right? You got to compete to be the alpha. You do what the hell you want to when you become the alpha. But that's just the truth of the matter. But with that being said, I want to go ahead and cut it off here. We can talk all day. Where can they find you at, Pasta?
They can find us. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Niko, for doing this with me. We don't talk enough. I miss you since you done come out, and I know I don't go to Florida enough. And I consider you just a friend, not just my brother and my boss, because we run over on the MCSC network, and I want to thank you, and so does the fam, for doing that from us. My name is Pasta Jordula. Obviously, I have a partner. Her name is Fiorella Isabel. I call her fam because we are family, and we have a show called The Convo Couch. You can find us on the MCSC network on the YouTube, but we also have our own YouTube that we just started not too long ago, and we would appreciate if you go over to the Convo Couch YouTube. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a Twitter, and we even have an Instagrizzy, I believe the kids are calling it nowadays.
Yeah, so make sure, look, this video, as we speak, we'll put the link under it. They just started their YouTube. They have about 250 subscribers right now. By the end of this video, I hope to see them at 1,000 subscribers. I want to see them get 1,000. So make sure you go subscribe now. Click on that notification bell. They'll be doing some exclusive stuff for their channels. They cover a lot of California politics, and it's a big deal because we all know California is really early. So the things that happen there will really probably determine the outcome of the election going forward.
Yeah.
So.
You know what they say, Niko? When it comes to the progressives, so goes California, so goes the rest of the progressives. But also, you live in the state. I keep on telling this people right now, if you're in Florida, Bernie Sanders wins Florida. Bernie Sanders wins the election.
Hell yeah. And I'm telling you, it's looking quite like Bernie Sanders is going to win Florida, because when I tell you, I worked in a high-end restaurant, and I would hear people, Republicans, Venezuelan and Cuban Republicans, will say, man, he's a quote-unquote socialist, or they'll say he's maybe a but that guy has integrity. He has more integrity than anybody else. Like I said, he may get it wrong, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have integrity. And they say for that reason alone, the same reason that a lot of people, the real legitimate Republicans, like not the ones who are just quoting rhetoric but don't get involved in politics, like not the ones who watch like Ben Shapiro for their news. The other ones, the real ones who are common sense, they like AOC because they be like, look, I may not agree with everything she's saying, but she has integrity, and I think that she wants to do the best for the country and let the chips fall where they may, but at least give us a chance. And they believe that Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, same thing, can do that. So with that being said, people, thank you all so much for tuning in to that conversation. Make sure you subscribe, leave your thoughts and your comments below. But more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace.
That's right. Love you all. Thank you, Niko.
Thanks for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. You can donate to our Patreon and keep helping the network grow by clicking on the link in the description below. And also, make sure you join us at JustNForm.com. And finally, make sure you subscribe to us on Roku and be part of the very first independent news network on Roku TV. But more than anything else, always remember, find your balance. Peace.